The rain drummed lightly against the window as Ryland scrolled through the adoption website for the third time that night. He never considered himself the kind of guy to get a pet, but loneliness had been creeping in lately, more insistent than ever. His last relationship ended years ago, and most of his friends had families of their own now. He wasn't looking for love, just something, anything, to make the house feel less empty. That's when he saw it. Furry Companion Service. The perfect pet for your perfect life. The ad boasted a revolutionary experience. Genetically modified pets engineered to be loyal, affectionate, and highly intelligent. Not quite a dog, not quite a cat, but something in between. More importantly, they didn't require walks or heavy maintenance. The website showed testimonials of satisfied owners with their fluffy companions curled up beside them. It seemed perfect. Ryland hesitated for a second, then shrugged. Why not? He selected a soft-furred, fox-like breed with deep blue eyes and placed the order. The confirmation email promised arrival within 48 hours. That night, for the first time in months, he went to sleep looking forward to something. The knock on the door came earlier than expected, barely 24 hours later. Ryland, still groggy from sleep, shuffled to answer it. The moment he swung the door open, his mind blanked. Standing on his porch was no small, furry pet. It was a woman. A breathtakingly strange woman. She was tall, slender but toned, with skin that shimmered faintly under the porch light. Her features were otherworldly: sharp cheekbones, luminous violet eyes, and pointed ears peeking through strands of silver-white hair that tumbled down her back. Soft fur-like markings traced along her shoulders and down her arms, shifting in color as she moved. Her lips parted slightly as she studied him, and then, in a voice that was both melodic and hesitant, she spoke. "I'd have arrived. You are my bonded one, yes?" Ryland stared, blinked, then slammed the door shut. His heart pounded against his ribs. What the hell just happened? For a long moment, he just stood there, breath coming fast. Maybe he was still dreaming. Maybe he was losing his mind. Then another knock. Gentle this time. "Please." He cracked the door open just enough to peek out. She was still there, tilting her head in confusion. She held up what looked like a small identification card, though the symbols on it were nothing he recognized. "There is mistake," he said carefully. "I ordered a pet?" The woman's brow furrowed. "Yes. You ordered. I was sent." He opened the door wider, gesturing toward her. "Not a pet. A small, furry animal." He mimicked the size with his hands. "Not you." She blinked, looking down at herself. Then back at him. "I am companion," she said softly. "That is what they told me." A chill ran down Ryland's spine. What the hell kind of company was this? He pulled out his phone, fingers moving rapidly to check the order confirmation. Still there. Furry Companion Model X9. No mention of people. Or aliens. Or anything remotely close to this. His stomach twisted as a terrible thought crept in. "Where did you come from?" he asked. The woman hesitated. Her glowing eyes flickered with something. Uncertainty? Fear? Far. Ryland exhaled sharply, raking a hand through his hair. This was insane. There had to be an explanation. Maybe she was a prank. Maybe someone was messing with him. But if this was real, if someone had actually sent her... "Listen," he said. "I think there's been a mistake. You should probably go." She stiffened, shoulders drawing back. "No." His brows lifted. "No." She took a step forward, crossing the threshold with eerie grace. "I cannot leave. You are my bond. I am not your..." He backed up as she entered fully, standing now in his living room, studying her surroundings with a quiet curiosity. His head spun. This wasn't happening. He needed answers fast. Before he could say another word, she turned to him with a small, knowing smile. "You have food, yes?" Ryland wasn't sure how it happened, but within minutes, the strange alien woman had made herself at home. She moved with quiet confidence, her luminous eyes scanning the room as if memorizing every detail. Meanwhile, He stood frozen by the door, watching in disbelief. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Yet, there she was, gracefully running her fingers along the back of his couch, tapping at the edge of his coffee table as if testing its sturdiness. Then, just as naturally as if she belonged there, she turned toward the kitchen. "You have food, yes?" she asked again. Relan blinked out of his daze. Yeah, I have food. But that's not the issue here." She turned to him with a patient expression. "It is important. You eat. I eat. Then we talk." Like she had just solved the entire situation. Relan exhaled sharply, dragging a hand down his face. He needed to contact the company, figure out what went wrong, and get her, whatever she was, out of here. But a small part of him, buried under layers of logic and panic, felt an odd sense of guilt. She looked exhausted, hungry, and she hadn't done anything threatening yet. "Fine," he muttered, moving past her toward the kitchen. "But after that, we figure out what the hell is going on." She made a pleased sound, a soft hum that sent a strange shiver down his spine, and followed him. As he rummaged through the fridge, he sneaked a glance at her. Up close, she was even more unreal. Her skin had a faint iridescence, shimmering as she moved. The fur-like markings along her arms and shoulders weren't just patterns, they shifted slightly, reacting to the light. "What exactly are you?" he asked cautiously. She tilted her head. "I am Isa." "No, I mean your species." She hesitated, then spoke slowly. "I am Evelian." That wasn't remotely familiar. "And you're from another planet?" "Yes." He let that sink in. His logical brain screamed for him to deny it. To call the cops, a scientist, the freaking government. But standing here, watching her observe his kitchen with quiet wonder, calling the authorities suddenly felt wrong. Instead, he focused on the food. Can you eat human food?" Isa nodded. "If it is not toxic." "Great." That narrowed it down. He decided to play it safe and made her a sandwich. As he handed it over, she accepted it with both hands, inspecting it like it was some rare treasure. Then she took a bite. Her entire body froze. Relan tensed. Is it okay?" Isa slowly chewed, then swallowed. Her violet eyes locked onto him, wide with something close to awe. "This is," she exhaled. "Warm." Relan raised a brow. "Yeah? It's fresh?" "No," she murmured. "Not just the temperature. The taste. The feeling." She took another bite, slower this time, eyes closing as if savoring it. Relan wasn't sure how to respond. She was acting like a sandwich was some kind of spiritual experience. When she finished, she looked at him with a soft expression. "Thank you." That threw him off more than anything else. Her voice had a sincerity to it that made something tighten in his chest. He cleared his throat and turned away, busying himself with cleaning up. "Okay," he said after a moment. "Now that you're fed, let's get some answers. You said you were sent here. By who?" Isa hesitated, glancing toward the window. "It is complicated." Relan folded his arms. "Try me." She exhaled slowly. "I was taken from my world. Not as an exile, not as a traveler, but as a product." His stomach sank. "What?" "The company you ordered from," she said, voice quieter now, "is not what you believe. They do not sell companions. They sell us." Relan felt the blood drain from his face. No, that couldn't be right. He had ordered a pet, a genetically engineered creature, not a sentient being. There had to be a mistake. "I was meant for someone else," Isa continued. "But I escaped before they could process me. The system sent me here instead." His mind raced. What kind of operation was this? Who else had unknowingly adopted beings like her? "So, what happens now?" he asked carefully. Isa's gaze softened. "I do not know. But I cannot leave." Relan swallowed. "Why?" She hesitated, then lifted her hand, pressing it lightly against his chest. Heat spread through him at the simple touch. Not just physical warmth, something deeper, a sensation that curled around his ribs and settled in his core. "Because I am bonded to you now." His breath hitched. What does that mean? She gave him a small, almost shy smile. It means, I am yours. Rylan barely remembered how to breathe. Isa's words lingered in the air between them, heavy with a meaning he didn't fully understand. I am yours. His pulse pounded as her hand remained against his chest, her warmth seeping through the fabric of his shirt. She wasn't pressing him, wasn't forcing anything, just waiting, watching, like she expected him to feel something too. And damn it, he did. The pull between them was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't just attraction, though that was undeniable. It was something deeper, something that sent his instincts into overdrive, making his skin tingle with awareness. But this was insane. He took a step back, breaking the contact. Isa, I don't know what's happening here, but I didn't sign up for this. She didn't seem offended. If anything, she looked patient, like she had expected his hesitation. I understand, she said softly. But it has already begun. What has? Our bond. His jaw clenched. You keep saying that. What does it actually mean? She tilted her head, considering him for a moment before speaking. Eve Lion do not choose mates the way humans do. We connect in a way that cannot be undone. It is why my people are rare among the stars. Once bonded, we do not seek another. Rylan swallowed hard. You're saying you're stuck with me? A small smile. Not stuck. Chosen. His stomach flipped. He didn't know whether to be flattered or completely freaked out. Look, he said, rubbing the back of his neck, I don't know how your kind works, but humans don't just bond instantly. Relationships take time. Trust. Understanding. Isa's gaze softened. Then I will learn. Her quiet certainty sent a strange ache through his chest. She truly believed this was fate. That she belonged here. With him. And the worst part? Some part of him wanted to believe it too. The next few days were strange. Isa stayed. He wasn't sure how he had agreed to it, but something about sending her away felt wrong. So he let her sleep on the couch, gave her spare clothes, and tried to teach her basic Earth customs. In return, she helped him understand her. Her species was incredibly advanced, but also deeply emotional, connected to the people they bonded with in ways beyond word. She wasn't just living in his house. She was attuned to him, noticing when he was tense, sensing his moods before he even spoke. And worst of all, she was getting under his skin. It was in the small things. How she tilted her head curiously at human phrases, repeating them with the tiniest smile. How she curled up in the warmest spot in the house, purring softly when she slept, purring. How her presence made his once empty home feel whole. Rylan hated to admit it, but he liked having her around. Maybe too much. And the moment he realized just how much? It was when another man looked at her. They had gone out for groceries. An innocent enough trip, or so he had thought. Isa, despite her alien features, had disguised herself well enough with a hoodie and sunglasses. But even under layers, she still had a presence that turned heads. Including one particular guy. He was standing in the frozen food aisle, eyeing Isa with undisguised interest. Rylan saw the moment the man's gaze lingered too long, drifting over her figure before stepping closer. Hey, the guy said smoothly, flashing a grin. Haven't seen you around before. Isa blinked, tilting her head. That is because I have not been here before. Rylan tensed. She wasn't being flirty, she was just literal. But the guy didn't know that. Lucky me then, the man chuckled. What's your name? Isa. Even her name sounded unfairly beautiful. The guy smiled wider. That's a gorgeous name for a gorgeous girl. Something dark and possessive flared in Rylan's chest. Before he could think, he moved, stepping in, placing himself between them. His arm brushed against Isa's, his body angled protectively. She's taken, he said flatly. The guy raised his hands. Hey, my bad, man. Didn't see a ring. Rylan didn't care. He kept his stance firm until the guy walked away. Isa watched him carefully, something unreadable in her glowing eyes. You were upset. He exhaled sharply. I wasn't upset, I just didn't like the way he was looking at you. She took a step closer. You felt protective? He swallowed. Her nearness made it impossible to think straight. Maybe. A slow smile. Good. His breath hitched. Good. Isa placed a hand against his chest again, just like before, but this time, he didn't move away. Her touch was warm, comforting, and worse, it felt right. You are starting to feel it too, she whispered. Relan didn't answer, because, for the first time since she had arrived, he wasn't sure he wanted her to leave. Relan wasn't sure when it happened, when his panic and resistance had shifted into something deeper. But now, standing in his dimly lit living room, Isa so close he could feel her warmth, he knew the truth. He didn't want her to leave. The realization hit like a lightning strike, scorching through his chest and settling deep in his bones. From the moment she arrived, everything in his life had changed. She wasn't just some unexpected guest. She wasn't some mistake. She was meant to be here. And he'd be damned if he let anyone take her away. That decision was put to the test sooner than expected. The knock at the door was sharp, impatient. Relan's heart clenched. He already knew, they had come for her. Isa stiffened beside him, her glowing eyes darkening with fear. She didn't have to say it. He could feel her tension, the silent plea in her gaze. Slowly, he walked to the door and cracked it open. A man in a dark suit stood on the porch, his expression unreadable. Mr. Relan Carter? Relan's grip tightened on the doorframe. Who's asking? The man flashed a badge. Some vague corporate emblem. No government agency, but close enough to be dangerous. You recently received a shipment that was not meant for you, the man said smoothly. We're here to correct that mistake. Ice slid down Relan's spine. You mean Isa? The man's expression didn't change. She's valuable property. It's best if you hand her over quietly. Property. The word sent a surge of fury through Relan's veins. Isa wasn't property. She wasn't some test subject, some experiment to be retrieved. She was his. And he would not let them take her. The next moments were a blur. Relan slammed the door before the agent could react, heart hammering as he turned to Isa. We have to go. She didn't hesitate. She trusted him. They ran. Out the back door, through the dark streets, his fingers wrapped tightly around her wrist as they weaved through alleyways and abandoned lots. He didn't know where they were going, he just knew they had to get away. Behind them, he could hear the distant sound of voices, of footsteps closing in. Isa, he gasped breathless. Can you do something? Call for help? She shook her head. I have no one. The weight of those words crushed him. She was alone, just like he had been. Not anymore. Then we'll figure it out, he swore. Together. Her fingers tightened around his, her trust unwavering. And just when it seemed like they were trapped, when the alley ahead ended in a solid wall, she turned to him, eyes glowing brighter than ever. Hold on to me, she whispered. Before he could question it, she wrapped her arms around him. Then the world shifted. A sensation like falling, like being pulled through a crack in space itself. Light burst around them, weightlessness flooding his senses. And then, they were somewhere else. Relan staggered, blinking in shock. The city was gone. The walls, the streets, the danger, gone. Instead, they stood in a vast field beneath a sky filled with unfamiliar stars. A hidden place. A sanctuary. He turned to Isa, his breath unsteady. What just happened? She smiled. A soft, relieved thing. I brought us somewhere safe. His mind reeled, but one thing was crystal clear. She had chosen him. And he had chosen her, even before he understood what it meant. There was no going back now. Days passed. Then weeks. The company never found them. Here, in this hidden world, they built a new life. Isa taught him more about her people, about her world. He learned her ways, her customs, and in return, she learned him. They weren't just bonded by fate. They were bonded by choice. And one night, as they lay beneath the unfamiliar stars, her fingers tracing gentle patterns over his chest, she whispered the words that had once terrified him. "You are mine." This time, he didn't pull away. He didn't deny it. Instead, he pulled her closer, pressing his forehead to hers, their breath mingling in the cool night air. "And you," he murmured, voice full of certainty, "are mine." Isa smiled against his lips, and as their hands entwined, Rielan knew he had found what he had been searching for all along. Not just a companion. A love worth fighting for,